From March 4th to the 16th, 1898 at the Bport Insane Asylum in Quebec, Canada, 23 patients were mysteriously slain in a horrific manner. 9 staff members resigned. On March 17, 1898, something unexplainable happened to patient 38-year-old Father Augustine LeBlanc, who was a Catholic priest at the time he was put into the asylum. A diary was discovered in his room, and what was written in it left staff members shocked and dismayed. These are some of the diary entries over a year span. A lot of the entries are not included, being complete gibberish or that same word repeated over and over again. This is also an account from one of the staff members, Liam Roy, of what happened during those days in March of 1898. They both been translated from French to modern-day English. There were no dates on the entries, but it's assumed he started writing the day after he arrived, which was April 12, 1897. I'm not sure how I got here. I woke up this morning and it appears I've been put into some kind of locked room. The only items in my room are a mattress, a bucket, and this empty diary, along with pencils. I can hear the moans and screams of other people, which makes me think this is a place for the insane. The last thing I remember, I was given my weekly sermon, and as I was speaking I was struck with an excruciating headache. Then everything went black. I do remember having the most horrific images go through my mind. After I blacked out, there was a black goat in the middle of my church. The goat was surrounded by the dead and bloody bodies of my congregation, save for one little girl with the blackest of eyes, who was standing next to the goat with her hand on its back covered in blood. The girl was staring at me and uttering something I couldn't understand. The goat's gaze upon me was terrifying. Its eyes also was black as night. The little girl then said the word Idera as they both turned and slowly walked out of the church. I woke up this morning screaming at the window, hoping I would die today. Hair appeared in my room. When I looked into it, I saw my soul. I saw the black goat and little girl in it. They whispered cursed and ungodly things to me. They spoke in Latin. My Latin is rusty. I couldn't understand all they said. What I did understand left me questioning my existence. Sometimes at night I hear them in the darkness whispering horrid things to me. Can anyone help me, save me from myself? The black goat and girl, whose name is Alice, came to me last night while I was sleeping. They told me where they're from and what their purpose is. Should I enter their realm of existence? Should I follow them deep into the darkness? Do I have a sickened mind and spirit? The mirror tells me only lies. Many times I screamed at them to leave me alone, but there was only silence from them. I covered my ears as I uttered the Lord's Prayer. Evil then levitated me into the air. I fell to the ground. Alice came to stand over me as she again uttered the word Idera. They walked into the mirror and were gone. I wept all night, calling out to the Lord to remove me from this earth, but my prayers were not heeded. Sanity, nah, it's beyond me. There's no choice. The pens and needles prick the skin of little dolls was all I heard in my mind over and over again. Last night, as I slept, I woke up thinking I was sweating profusely. I looked down and I scratched the skin off my arms. Why the people who I now call the alkalis came in and bandaged up my arm. They warned me next time I hurt myself, I'll be put in some kind of jacket. I asked them again why I'm here, and they would not answer us. I told them Alice is waiting, but they continued to ignore me. Alice and the dark goat now come to me every day through the mirror. It's always Latin they speak to me, and sometimes I listen and sometimes I cover my ears in desperate hopes they'll leave me alone and pay me no heed to no avil, though their visits are getting longer and darker each time they come. Lord Jesus, why hast thou done this to me? Why hast thou forsaken a servant of thee? Take my soul from this whore place, O God. I'm ready to enter thy kingdom, O Lord. I hear them behind me now. I don't want to turn around. Will they not leave me be? The blackened now calls upon me. I am weary, no sleep, no peace. If there is an end to this, I hasten it to come quickly. Alice whispered unimaginable things to me today. I want to die. I've tried killing myself many times, but cannot. Something stopping me. Please, God, take me from this earth into thy bosom. Make the sound stop. I'm going mad. I hear Alice's laughter in the darkness. She whispers, Okita Okit Dara. It's the same thing again and again. When I awoke this morning, I was looking down at my mattress. Our God and the devil one and the same are we, but mere puppets in his sick charade. As I looked down from the ceiling, Alice and the dark goat came out of the mirror she looked up at me with her black eyes and spoke for a lengthy period of time. It was in my language, so I fully understood her. God help me, I must give myself to them for the torment, and for I cannot stand this any more. If there is a God, may he have mercy on my soul. That was the final entry in Augustine's diary. The last 2 pages of the diary was the word Dera written over and over again. This is the account from Liam Roy during the days in March of 1898 when the slangs took place. I've been warned and threatened not to tell anyone about what happened at the Bport Asylum during those days in March of 1898, but I don't care. I no longer work there and plan on leaving this city soon to start my life somewhere else. I was there the first evening it all started on March 4th. I was walking down the hallway when I heard what sounded like someone choking loudly in the room I just passed. I quickly turned around and walked back. I put my light up to the door's window to look inside and nearly fell backwards. There was a man holding the patient in the air by his neck as he struggled to break free. I couldn't make out who the other man was. I fumbled for the keys as I hurriedly unlocked the door. When I opened the door and stepped inside, I nearly vomited. On the floor was the body of the patient. His head had been severed, and there was blood everywhere. The expression on his face was grisly. I then looked around the room, but was shocked to see there was no one else there. How could that be, I thought. Less than 1 minute ago I saw a man holding him in the air. Once I gathered myself, I slowly walked closer to the decapitated body, and immediately noticed something odd. Where the head had been separated from the body, it looked like it had been pulled apart rather than a clean cut a knife would make. After standing there for a few minutes in disbelief, I came back to my senses and ran to get help. When I made it to the room where staff members take their breaks, I could see there were 2 other men there. I stumbled to find the words, and all that came out was, "Come quick, something's happened." They could tell by the tone of my voice and look on my face something horrible had happened. They immediately jumped up and followed me as I ran back down the hallway to the room. Once we made it to the room, one of them started dry heaving as the other asked, "What in the holy name of God happened here?" I don't know. When I walked past the room, I heard what sounded like choking, so I quickly came back and saw a man holding him in the air. I looked down as I grabbed my keys and unlocked the door. Once inside, "This is what I saw," I replied. He said nothing as he looked at me with a horrified expression. "I'm going to get the doctor on duty," I said as I turned and left. When I reached the doctor's office, I had to wake him up and told him he needed to come with me, but did not give him any details. He complained as he followed me to the room, saying he'd been up all night the night before. When we reached the room, he immediately shut his mouth as he stood there. A long period of silence went by before he asked, "Who did this to this man?" I then told him the same thing I told the other man. The doctor then said, "Say nothing to no one until I consult with the head doctor and we can figure out what to do. Do cover the window and lock this room, gentlemen. Make damn sure no one enters it without my permission." He then walked down the hallway heading to the head doctor's office. As we locked the door and covered the window, we decided to take turns sitting by the room, making sure no one else would see what was inside. About 20 minutes later, the 2 doctors came walking down the hallway. They were speaking, but just low enough I couldn't make out what they were saying. They stopped talking as they got closer to me. "Open up the door and let's have a look," then said the head doctor. I stood up from the chair I was sitting on and unlocked the door. As I opened it and he walked inside, he gasped and said, "Jesus, Mary and Joseph, what the hell happened?" And here I again told him what I told the others. I stood there as he looked around the room and examined the body and severed head. "It looks like the head was ripped off from the body. It doesn't look like it was cut with any kind of knife or tool," he said. "That's exactly what I thought when I first saw it, but kept my mouth shut, just standing there in silence awaiting his instruction. There was no one else in here when you opened the door?" he asked. "Positive, sir. I only saw the other man through the small window right before I opened the door," I replied. "This is the most disturbing thing I've seen in all my 20 years as a doctor," he said. He then stood up from being hunched over the body and didn't say anything for a while. "Let's get this cleaned up then. I want you to bury the body deep in the woods. Bring the other gentleman in here," he said. I then and grabbed the other 2 men. "No one breathes a word of this to Anyone is that understood we have no idea what happened here. We don't need the authorities coming around, and we certainly don't need this getting around the city, he said. We all nodded our heads in agreement. Good, now get this cleaned up quickly. If someone asks what happened to this patient, we say he died in his sleep, and his family came and collected at his body. Nothing more, the head doctor said. Both doctors then left as we started cleaning up the mess. The smell alone was something I'll never forget. I had to put on a handkerchief around my nose and mouth just to tolerate it. We took turns cleaning while someone kept an eye out, making sure no one would see what we were doing. Once we cleaned up the blood, we put the body and head on the mattress, covered it with a blanket, and took it outside. We then went deep into the woods, like we'd instructed, and buried him. I couldn't even tell you where we buried him. The next day we went about things as usual. When I got to the asylum that afternoon, that is until later in the evening, I remember I was alone in the staff room meeting, and I heard someone running down the hallway. I froze in place, as no one there runs unless there's an emergency. One of the staff members who works on a different floor came running into the room and shouted, "Come quick, something gruesome has happened." I dropped what I was eating and took off down the hallway following him. I had an idea of what had happened when we made it to the second floor. We hardly ran down to the last room at the end of the hallway. When I stepped inside, I immediately put my hand up to my mouth and nose. The walls were covered in blood, but it's what was laying on the floor that left me in shock. It was hard to make out what it had been, as they were bits and pieces scattered about. "What do we do?" he asked me. "Has anyone else seen this besides you?" I responded. "No, you're the first person I ran into." He replied, "Good, tell no one, and I want you to go grab the head doctor and bring him here now. Hurry." The first said. I closed the door to the room and stood outside, making sure no one else would see it. A few minutes later, I saw them walking briskly down the hallway towards me. "Go and open the door," said the head doctor. I said nothing as I opened the door and stepped aside, letting him enter. "Mother Mary of God, what is going on here?" he asked as he turned and looked back at me. "I don't know, sir. Something sinister is definitely at play here," I replied. "This patient is in pieces. I can't tell what is what," he said. "Would you like us to clean it up, sir?" Like before, I asked. "Yes, of course." And again, "Hurry, not a word of this to anyone. I need to go consult the other doctors on this," he said as he walked away. I told the other staff member to go grab what we need to clean up the mess. As I waited by the door guarding it, he came back a little while later, and we spent the next several hours cleaning up that disgusting mess. Since there wasn't a full body like last time, we decided to go burn the patient's mattress along with what was left of him, which we did out back by the stable. As I stood there watching the mattress go up in flames, I remember a lot of things going through my mind. What exactly is going on? Am I next? Why these patients? I was scared to death and couldn't forget the man I'd seen holding up the first patient by the neck. I never got a good look at his face, but something about him seemed familiar. The brutal killings went on for another 11 days, with 20 more patients dying and each killing seeming more horrific than the last. We buried them as well and kept it all a secret. From what I've been told, the last killing happened on the evening of March 16th. I, along with 8 other staff members who were involved in cleaning up and hiding the bodies, resigned on the morning of March 17th, 1898. Something unexplainable happened on the night of the 16th, though that haunts me even more than the killings. I just finished cleaning up the last body when one of the other staff members came in and said they had something to show me. At first, I thought it was another dead body, which made me immediately get angry and told him to handle it, but he said it was something different, so I followed him to the room. As we walked down the hallway, he told me he was doing room checks on patients, and when he got to Augustine LeBlanc's room, he could see he was not there. He opened the door to investigate and found nothing except for one strange thing. When we made it to the room and I walked inside, it's hard to put into words, but the best way to describe it is, it felt like I was leaving my existence and entering another. When I looked all around, then went and flipped his mattress over and saw his diary and pen on the floor, which patients are not supposed to have, but I understand they get a hold of contraband. Sometimes I picked up the diary and continued looking around the room when I noticed something on the wall that bewilders me to this day. There on the wall, drawn in pencil, were thick black lines in the shape of what looked like a door about 182 centimeters high and 121 cm wide. I looked back at the staff member, who shrugged his shoulders as he had no idea what it was either. I told him to close and lock the door and not say anything to anyone about Augustine disappearing as I would do it. He simply nodded his head and said nothing. I wanted time to read the diary and check the doctor's notes we had on Augustine. I then went somewhere I wouldn't be disturbed and read the diary in its entirety. After that, I went to Augustine's doctor's office and found the notes his doctor had written on him. Nothing much stood out to me except for why he'd been put in the asylum in the first place. He'd been a priest and 12 members of his congregation had been brutally slaughtered the year before during his service, similar to what happened to the 23 patients at Bport. They found Augustine lying on the floor incoherently mumbling something. He was immediately declared insane by the authorities who handled the situation and was sent to the asylum the following day. I resigned the next day and decided to keep his diary, but not before sharing it with some of the other staff members. I keep it somewhere safe now. I call it the Diary of a Madman. Father Augustine LeBlanc was never seen or heard from again. For more scary horror stories, please subscribe. Specter Stories.